Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Veterans in Conversation. This is actually season two and our first episode. And so we're excited. We've had a year under our belt here doing this, Barry and myself, under the power of story. This is a growing thing. And we're very excited today to welcome Rand Timmerman. Rand, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Scott.
Right. So Barry's going to read a little bit about Rand. He has a bio, but before he does, I just want to say, as a fellow Marine, I'm very excited to have another Marine on our program who's going to share his story with us. Um, Rand served as a Marine in the Vietnam War, so he's got a very important story. We all have, personal stories to share, but I think his is unique, certainly based on the path that he took as a Marine. I think he's probably the only one in the Marine Corps that did it the way he did it. So that in itself is a kind of a cool story. So again, welcome, Brand, and I'm going to turn it over to Barry so he can read your bio here, and then we're just going to jump right into the interview. We'll go over, some of your childhood that you want to share with us, and then we'll go right into, why you decided to be a Marine, how you got into that, share some experiences as a Marine. If you can talk to us a little bit about your time in Vietnam, whatever you're comfortable with sharing. And then from there, we'll, talk about your career as a lawyer, and then anything else that comes up, we'll do that as well. So, Barry, off to you.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And Rand, before I go into your bio, I've always said that the elders have the wisdom. And, the Vietnam generation have always been my brothers. The Rhodesian Bush War boys and you, we overlay, and we the old generation that are grey and lined and slowly fading away. And I think the opportunity for you to be here today to share your story is critical because there'll be a time where your generation, my generation no longer exist, and these stories need to be collected. So it's an absolute gift to have you here today. So a little bit about you. Rand was born in 1946, grew up in a small village in Adams, New York, which had more cows than people. He attended Oswego State University for 3 semesters, and in March 1966, he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps and served primarily with the 1st Marines in Vietnam, reaching the rank of corporal. He was promoted temporarily to second lieutenant in Vietnam for the last few months. After that combat experience, he went to Officer Candidate School, the Basic School, and then the Judge Advocate General School. And subsequently, he served as a JAG officer and was honorably discharged as a captain after 5 years of service. Afterwards, in 1970, he attended Syracuse University, acquiring his BA degree and graduated cum laude from law school in 1975. Thereafter, he worked for a short time for a small company and then self-employed for 40 years via 3 separate law firms serving St. Lawrence, Jefferson, Oswego, Lewis, and Onondaga countries. I've probably mutilated all of those. Since retiring in 2012, the author has written numerous books and short stories, including this one regarding hiking the Appalachian Trail with his brother in 2018 and 2019 at the ripe old age of being in his 70s, which was a remarkable achievement. Rand, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today and looking forward to hearing the story of your journey as you share it with us. Thanks, brother.
Thank you, Barry. Appreciate it very much. Rich, I got to tell you, man, you've helped me a lot, and you help people that you don't even know it, man. So, yeah, salute you. So, yeah, well, I was born in 1946 and grew up in Adams, New York. And somewhere around 5 years old, I was became aware. And I looked around and I thought, we're screwed. We are literally screwed. It was Christmas Day. I was 5 years old. I had my brother Ron and my sister Linda, 3. And we had a Christmas tree with a couple of bulbs on it. And there was one present under the tree, and it was a pedal wagon that my father had gotten from the dump and fixed it up for us. And my sister cried the whole day because she wanted a doll. And I'll never forget the look in the eyes of my mom and my dad. how sorrowful they were because they couldn't even provide enough food. My dad was standing there in crutches. My dad was a Mustang pilot in World War II. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was actually born in kind of a warrior family. I had a couple uncles that served in World War II. My dad was a Mustang pilot. Married my mom and had me and my brother and got polio. And somehow he managed to make it to the Children's Hospital in Utica, which is like a 2.5 hour drive, and spent a year there, 8 months in an iron lung. He had two cousins. One was 18, the other one was 19, got polio the same day and died. So there was something in our genes that was made us very susceptible to polio. A lot of people don't realize polio was a huge problem. In that village of 2,500 people, probably there was 100 people that had polio. I mean, it was devastating in many ways. But anyway, so I don't know what kind of a man my dad was before that, but I know what kind of a man he was after that. And he was a hardworking man. He was desperate to be successful. And he worked for the hardest working man I probably ever knew. But he also he could not handle emotional stress well. And I was the oldest, and I had to, if I wasn't in school or hadn't come up with some other thing to do like scouts or sports, I had to be with him. And I was his gopher, get to, and the other kids had a normal childhood. I didn't. I resented the hell out of it. I ended up in the hospital a couple times because I knew where the buttons were. And second time, I'll never forget, we're in the emergency room. The doctor's like, uh, this boy seems to fall down the stairs quite a bit. I had black eyes and a broken nose. And my dad said, yeah, he's real clumsy. But he was really a good parent in a way. I don't want you guys feeling bad because I'm going to talk about things. I don't want you feeling sorry for me. My experiences are maybe the man I am today. When I had an alcohol problem. I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. Hope you bear with me, but I had an alcohol problem. I knew it at 13 that alcohol it affected me different. I had a little higher tolerance for it, and I really liked it too much. The good part of that was at 13, I made the decision I was never going to do any drugs because why would I, right? So anyway, eventually alcohol is a disease. It got to me in my late 50s, early 60s, and I went into a recovery program and I did it. I ended up doing this. I had a bad relapse history for a while. I had some suicidal. I ended up in the hospital a couple times. Ended up in a psych ward once for a week. And got a ride there in handcuffs. Very demoralized. Alcohol really did a number on me in the later years. But anyway, so I finally did get into the program and I did all the 12 steps. And when I got done with that, about a year in, a young guy asked me to be a sponsor. And I had a sponsor. That's how I got sober. I finally said, help me. And somebody helped me. So I told the guy to come back the next day and we'll, talk about it. So anyway, I went running to my sponsor because I was sure Billy was going to tell me I'm not ready, right? And Billy goes, oh, no, Rand, you're ready. You got a lot of bad experience. And now you got some good experience, right? And he was right. I had a ton of bad experience. And I'm going to talk about quite a bit of it here. And then about 5 years later, from that point on, I was always sponsoring guys. A lot of vets, actually. You can figure that out, right? I can relate to them. They can relate to me and that sort of thing. And I was doing what we call fifth step with one. Oh, about 5 years ago, I was 75. And afterwards, that's where we admit to God, to ourselves, another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. Because the founders of the program figured out if an alcoholic doesn't spill his guts to somebody, he's probably going to get drunk again, right? So we did it. And the guy goes, Rand, if you could go back and change anything, would you? And I said, no. I didn't even think about it. I didn't hesitate. I said, no. All the bad stuff, all of it. I would not be the person I am today. I would not be the spiritual man I am today. I would not be the humble man I am not today. And I would not be the grateful man I am today. So no, I wouldn't change a darn thing. Would I at the time? Probably yes, right? So anyway,
Hey, Rand, if I may, before you go any further, I just want to thank you for what you're saying. I think that is so important. I think a lot of people wish that they could click their heels, or if they had a magic ball or something, that they could change their lives, that they would in an instance jump into that. And the thing about that is you never know what you might get different than what you had, right? I mean, not that we can go back and do that, but that's a way to look at it. And when you mentioned about an alcoholic, sharing, revealing and speaking to the things that they speak to, that's one of the most powerful things I think you can say about that, because I believe that. I believe it happens with, what we've been doing with the Power Story for going on 6 years now, that the power of your story, there is absolute power to that. It is healing for other people, and it's absolutely healing for yourself to be able to tell your story and to kind of unload and offload the weight that we carry through whatever struggles that we're going through. So, and I can relate absolutely. So
yeah.
thanks for saying that.
Thank you. Yeah. So anyway, I grew up in a very rural area, and the good part was we were surrounded by farms. People were still hand milking cows in those days. As a kid, I could go into a farm and say, "You need me to do something," and I would clean the gutters, and they'd give me a quarter, and I'd put it in the manure spreader, and I'm driving the tractor, and I'm spreading the manure, and I'm doing man type work, and I'm 12, 13-year-old kid. So that was a big plus for me. And I first person in my family to go to a college, and I went to Oswego, which wasn't very far from where I lived. And I was doing okay there, but I didn't have any money. I had a huge resentment against poverty. I was driven to succeed. So I was working as a janitor in my old high school, and I was cleaning toilets from midnight to 8 o'clock every morning, going to classes. I was a pin setter in a bowling alley. And I was selling Amway on the weekends and I had no money. You know what I mean? And I had a beat up Volkswagen with 400,000 miles in it. And I would save my change and I would get drunk probably like once a month. And in February of 1966, and I had changed my major twice. Third time I changed it to psychology because I knew it was a nut job. And I couldn't figure out what the hell I was going to be when I finally grew up. And so I get drunk in this bar. And apparently I was the last one in there, passed because I was passed out on the pool table when the owner came in the next morning. I heard him put the key in the door, and he walks into this bar. I'm laying on the pool table. He never said a word to me. He walked over, he turned on the radio, and he starts cleaning the glasses. And they're talking about First Marine Division going into Vietnam, and the kill ratio and this and that. And I'm laying there on a pool table, and I'm like, I'm in. And the guy came over, started mopping under the pool table, like, he's get the hell out of here. He didn't say anything. And I just swung my legs over and looked at him in the face and walked out. A month later, I'm in the War Memorial in Syracuse, New York, pledging to protect my country from enemies, foreign and domestic. I got a free ride in a bus full of Marine recruits. Half of them had been drafted. And we're on
And
the
how
way
old, how old were you then, Ron? Again,
I was
Rand?
19.
19.
Yeah.
My grandfather was 19 when he volunteered for the Second World War as a Marine. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we get down to Paris. Half the guys on there were draftees, and they were like, "I'm on the wrong bus. I'm on the wrong bus." The Marine Corps drill instructors were on that. There was two of them there on that bus. We are having a field day, man. And you know what? The good news is all those guys made it once they got over that shock and everything. So we got down to Paris Island. It is overrun with recruits. The Marine Corps was only about 200,000. That's standard manpower then, and it is now. But it went up to 1 million during the war. And then it started going back down again around 1970, just as when I started to get out. But anyway, I didn't know all that then. But so we get there, and I'm in a Hawaiian shirt, bell-bottom trousers, sneakers, denim jacket. It's March, it's cold. And what do they got me doing for a week? I'm cleaning toilets. I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't join the Marine Corps to clean toilets. And I'd be looking out the window, and there's all the recruits, and they got their Stars uniforms, and the guys there the first week are marching with wooden rifles. I mean, this looked like Civil War stuff, right? But anyway, so I ended up being the real deal and did all the training, combat training. I go to end up in Camp Pendleton with all my guys. We're a tribe, right? We trained all, did all this training together. We're going off to war. I'm worrying that it's going to be over before I get there. That was insane, right? So we get out to Camp Pendleton and we did a final advanced month of combat training. And 2 days before they left, they lined us up out. In the Marine Corps, they never told you what they were going to do in those days. I think it's different now, but the idea was you had to be ready for anything, right? So you never knew what you were going to do from day to day or even hour to hour a lot of times. They reversed the battalion, and instead of being the last man in, I'm the first one that walks into this hangar, and nobody can see outside what's going on. And when I turn the corner, there's corpsmen lined up with their inoculation guns, right? Now it's 100 degrees outside. It's hotter than hell. It's one of those days. And I walk down the line and they nail you with the guns. I think there's probably three on each side. I don't know how many they did. And I jerked. And so when I walked out of the hangar door, I got blood running down my arms and dripping off my fingers. And half the guy, I walked outside in the heat and guys just started fainting by the dozens. It was kind of funny, actually. The next day, we're in formation. We've checked, everything has been done. We're supposed to leave. A guy comes out, sergeant with a clipboard, and yells my name, and everybody's looking at me, what the hell, Timmer? And so I march up the front and stand there in tension, and he goes, you're going on mess duty for 30 days. I go, what? You got to be kidding me. No, you don't be giving, you know how they are, right, Scott? The next day, all my guys leave. And I had 30 days of mess duty from 4 o'clock in the morning till 6 or 7 o'clock at night, 30 days straight, no weekends, no nothing, peeling potatoes. They had my stool. I sat there with a peeler, pile of potatoes 10 feet high. And by the end of the day, it was a lot smaller, but it was never all gone. And that just totally changed my life in ways you couldn't imagine. So anyway, eventually I do get to Vietnam, and I actually ran into a couple of those
Hey,
guys.
Rand, real quick, since you mentioned that, how did that affect you? How did those peeling of the potatoes, how did that affect you? What was the outcome with that?
It scared the hell out of me because now I don't know who I can turn to in a battle, right? I knew what was going to happen. Well, I thought I knew what was going to happen. I really didn't. You don't comprehend.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
so you're saying your tribe went on, and so you're going to be moving forward with guys that you didn't train with and folks that you know and trust.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
The good news, I went over in a Boeing 707 or whatever it was at that point. But anyway, I ended up in First Marine Division. So I get there, we go into Okinawa, and then I took another. Somehow I got to into First MAW, First Marine Air Wing, in Da Nang, and then my orders were to First Marine Division. So I'm in the First Marine Division, right? And I get there, and it's monsoon, it's pouring buckets. By the time I get there, it's dark. I had to ride a 6 by up to get to the headquarters battalion, get all my gear. I had a guide taking me around, got my rifle, everything. Walk into what's called the transition tent, and he starts to open the door. We're standing, it's pouring rain, it's pitch dark, and it's sandbag. I mean, it's a war zone, right? And there's a shot, bang. What the hell? Long story short, after a whole bunch of pandemonium and a bunch of yelling and stuff, they took the Marine out in his poncho. And I walked in. I had no place to go. The guy that was taking me around, he left. So anyway, I end up in the tent. I get in the back. There's one cot left there. And I'm just sitting there listening to those. I'm in shock. And sitting there listening to those guys. And what had happened was they had just come out of the field, so they still have their weapons. But they're supposed to go home the next day. They're going home. This poor guy is sitting there. They got their mail. We always got like once a month in a big bundle. And apparently he had gone through, he was looking for letters from his girlfriend. He found the most recent one. He opened it up and said, "Dear John, I don't know how to tell you this, but I met somebody else and it's been a whirlwind and we got married yesterday." And that guy just picked up he never thought, I'm sure he didn't even think. All his hopes and dreams were dashed in that instant, apparently. And he picked up the pistol and blew his brains out. That
Wow.
had a stunning effect on me. I was filled with anxiety, but now I'm filled with how the hell can this happen? It was just unbelievable. So anyway, uh, my experiences in Vietnam were I was a one-off, so I could be doing almost anything. First couple of weeks, you're burning shitters. That was pretty standard stuff. And then you're doing ambushes and trolls and perimeter stuff. I was a clerk typist. Some days I would be typing all day and then I'd go out on an ambush at night or whatever. Um, a couple of things happened that were okay. So one of the things that happened was I had gone out to a platoon. I'd made my way through the battalion to the company to the platoon, and I could hear there was a firefight going on. And I get down there and give them what I had to give them, and then they said, "Oh, there's a prisoner here. We want you to take him back to." They want him back at the headquarters battalion. So go down that. So I'm walking around the jungle by myself with a prisoner, right? So I finally get to where the landing is, and there's nobody there. So I tie the guy to a tree. I have him sit down. He's tied up. His hands are behind his back. They get a rope around his waist. He's got his blindfold on. So I set him down on the ground, tie him to the tree, and I just did kind of a one-man perimeter. I'm walking around, just keeping an eye on everything, and pretty soon, six bites come flying in with it's a resupply point, right? So one of the guys, I hear this guy yell my name, Timmer, and it's one of the guys I trained with, right? So we're all, he jumps out, and we're hugging, not kissing, but meeting, greeting each other, and really happy to see each other. And there's six guys backing up, and all of a sudden, this loud scream just shatters the air, and Joe, the guy I'm talking to, says, "Timmer, what the hell was that?" And oh crap. And I go running back to where the tree is that I tied this prisoner up, and the six by didn't he doesn't they don't pay any attention, right? He backs up, he hits the tree, well, he crushes the guy. So he pulls ahead, and there's no medic there. Guy's screaming, his head, he's got blood coming out of every orifice. His chest is crushed. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Um, I ended up untying him and laying him on his back and took the blindfold off. So I'm looking him in the eyes and holding his hands, and he passed pretty fast, thank God. And I just felt like, oh my God, how many Marines are going to get killed because of your stupidity, I realized how important if they wanted me to take that guy to headquarters battalion, it was a good reason. So that had an indelible, it's one of those things you end up putting that dark place in the back of your brain that you don't want to go into without a flashlight and a shotgun. And
Hey,
uh,
well, hey, Rand, let's stop and talk about that for a second, right? You're certainly old enough to know things happen for a reason, right?
yeah, I
You
know.
you were the guy that was assigned that task, and you know, being by yourself. I mean, that's crazy to begin with, right? I mean, that wouldn't happen. At least I don't think it would, right? I mean, things happen in combat that are unusual, but you know, you, what are the odds of you running into a guy that you trained with in the middle of a combat zone when you guys were 30 plus days apart? Uh, you were there seeing a brother, and it was a good thing. And, accidents happen, right? And so,
Yeah, no, I
I mean,
know.
that wasn't, I'm sure you probably settled with this. I mean, that wasn't your fault, right? And
I processed it. Yeah.
yeah, well, the part that I find amazing about that is what you said when you untied him and you laid him down, you took his blindfold off, and you were there looking into his eyes. You were the last person he saw, and you were showing compassion. How many people had compassion for their enemy? Not many, and so that says something about you.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing. I mean, that really struck me.
Yeah. Well, I had quite a few. Thank you, Scott. I had quite a few misadventures. Um, Combat zone is chaotic, and you end up doing a lot of things alone that are kind of crazy in a way. But most people don't realize about a third, somewhere researched with the DoD a little bit on the casualties in Vietnam. There was 59,000. That's pretty well established. What they don't know is how many were accidental. Somewhere between 25 and 30%. So that's a lot, right? That's a and that was kind of my experience too. I went down in a C-130 that only had one engine still running. And by a fluke, at the last moment, practically, we came out of these thunderstorms and everything. There was a dirt airstrip west of Da Nang. Dirt. It's not long enough, right? But the pilot was going to make me jump out the back. Me and the lift master. And I don't know what the rest of the crew was going to do, but he was starting to put it down, and then at the last second, we popped out of the thunderstorms, and there's a strip right in front of us. So he closed back up the back and said, "Hang on, because I think we can get this bird on the ground." And he landed it. He hit the strip okay, but it wasn't long enough, and we ended up in a rice paddy. But we were alive, and we walked out of that. And a lot of those people that got killed, a lot of accidental discharges, all kinds of things. Being a forward observer was I wasn't that, but a difficult job. We got killed by friendly fire sometimes, all kinds of stuff. Accidents, every nature you could imagine. So I volunteered, I'll tell you one more story. I volunteered to be a machine gunner on a helicopter because it was a hell of a lot better than walking around the jungle all day long. A lot of it was very tedious and boring, and your anxiety level was always kind of a little higher threshold than normal, but a lot of it was just friggin' miserable, right? And so I volunteered a lot. You get bored with certain things. Anyway, so I volunteered to be a machine gunner on a helicopter, and I was a sub because I'm the like low man on the totem pole, right? So every day I would be assigned to whatever helicopter somebody was sick or they got wounded the day before or whatever. And one day I walked into the helicopter, had my M60 machine gun, and I'm looking, and the captain, the pilot, has got a revolver in a holster hanging on the back of his seat. And I go, sir, you need to move that. And he told me to go have sex with my mother and to mind my own business. So, sure enough, a few hours later, we went in hot and ended up with three prisoners. And I had jumped off and taken in water and ammo and stuff, and then they made me bring these prisoners out, and they weren't properly secured. Their hands were in front instead of back. So I put them on this is all very chaotic, right? I'd get the ammo and the water off, I'd get these guys on, and I get back on, put my headset back on, so I'm connected to the intercom, and all of a sudden I hear the pilot screaming at me, and I turn and look, and one of the prisoners had pulled his blindfold down and grabbed the pilot's pistol. So I unhook, jump in. I managed to get a hold of the pistol, and so we're fighting for the pistol basically. But at least I got my hand on it, and the pilot is doing this, and instantly I realize he's trying to dump us both out, right? He wants to just get the weapon, and so in the end, the prisoner goes out one side, and I go out the other side with the pistol in my hand. Yahoo! And I knew anytime I get in a situation where it's not looking good and there's nothing I can do about it, I close my eyes. I just know I do that, right? So I close my eyes, something hit me, and then I get this wicked pain in my crotch, and I open my eyes and I realize I'm on the skid. The other gunner hit me as I'm going out the door, right? he tried to grab me. He didn't get me, but he hit me and knocked me back below onto the skid. And I opened my eyes and I could see the call sign underneath the helicopter, right? Because it got the numbers on them. And I realized they're not getting smaller. So I'm not falling. And I got back. Took a while, but he finally got me back on into the bird. And when I showed up at the operations tent the next day, there was two MPs there. I
Well,
was not. I
Rand,
was not a mach-
I'm
was not a
sorry I'm
mach-
laughing that, I mean, it's not a funny, but your humor with this is remarkable. You realize that the letters weren't getting smaller, right? You weren't falling, right? That's
Yeah.
funny.
Well, on the
Crazy,
way back to the
crazy
base, so we
story.
still got two prisoners, right? On the way back to the base, the pilot goes, "I don't want anybody talking to anybody about this. You let me take," and I was totally fine with that. Yes, sir. I have no problem. But what I didn't expect was, the next morning when I showed up at the ops tent to get my assignment, there was two MPs there, and I got new orders, and they sent me back into the jungle and like 300 miles away. So I realized then that the enemy is not only the ones out there, but you really have to be aware of. And the other reason I tell you that story is because I had awful nightmares finally at the end. So anyway, I do my tour, and the last night I'm in Vietnam, we get mortared, and we run outside. I got hit by shrapnel. I got knocked out, and I didn't make it into the bunker because of getting hit, but I was also drunk. So a few hours later, it was getting daylight. Guys are looking for me because I didn't go in the bunker, and the other tent was where the we were drinking was destroyed. And anyway, so I end up going to the aid station. They go, "Well, you apparently got hit by the mortar attack last night. You can get a Purple Heart if you want it." And then I said, "Oh, well, I don't know." And then because I didn't really feel like I mean, come on. But anyway, and then he said, "But you're gonna have to stay for a couple more days." I said, "Nope, I'm out of here." So I went home with my state of my face was black, and I think my nose was broke again for the third time, and that's how I ended up at home. But anyway, so we went to Okinawa. They give us brand new everything, dress greens, put us on the tarmac. Every plane that comes in is going to be our plane. It's 100 degrees, with 100% humidity. And we sit there for 3 days and 2 nights. And planes come in, we're going to get on it. And then uh, one point, a rock band showed up. Apparently, the Air Wing, they had all kinds of bennies, right? So instead of us getting on the plane, a rock band got on the plane. And then a couple other times there was colonels and admirals and oh my God, all kinds of people, right? So we were low man on the totem pole. They brought us out sandwiches, and Joe said, "Lieutenant, you got to do something." I was back to corporal by then. They had made me a second lieutenant for a couple months, but I was really just a corporal. So I went and complained to them. So they gave us a big umbrella to put over, give us some sandwiches. So, and then we ended up flying to LA, which I think that was like a 12-hour flight. So I get to LA in dress greens that I've been wearing for 3 days and not smelling particularly fresh anymore, that's for sure. Totally worn out. I was 148 pounds, 5'8" when I went to Vietnam. Really my best physical shape ever. I'm 110 pounds. I look like a Viet Cong. My face is brown, my hands are brown. The rest of me's not, but skinny as hell and look like crazy. So we're in LA. We go and get our tickets, and I had to fly. I'm supposed to fly standby. And of course, then we dispersed. We all went to different gates because we're all going to different towns, right? And I'm in LA, and I go to my gate, and there's a long line. And I walk to the front of it with my duffel bag and put it down, hand my ticket, and I'm like, I'm getting on this plane, right? And they're looking at me. And this one of the guys in the line, great big guy, probably 6'4", 250 pounds, linebacker type guy, and he's comes up and starts hitting me in the, get in the back line, blah, 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 and started calling me a baby killer and stuff like that. And then he pushed me. And that was a big mistake because there's a whole bunch of stanchions. So I grabbed the ends. I'm going to kill this bastard. I lost my mind, right? I grabbed the stanchion, whipped the rope out of it, and I'm using it like a baseball bat, one of those metal things. And the next thing I know, I'm surrounded by four stewardesses. The guy is in handcuffs, and the police are taking him away. And then I'm in first class. I'm the first one on the plane. I'm in first class, and I'm sitting there. You want a drink? Yeah, sure. And the pilot comes over and sits down next to me, starts talking to me. He's a Marine pilot, right? And he's retired. So that's what happened. He saved my ass. He was the pilot of that plane too, right? He's a commercial
Amen.
pilot now. Yeah.
Yeah, I see a trend here, Rand.
So I get home. Uh, I don't know. It was the next day. My family was happy to see me. Uh, we're having breakfast and stuff. My duffel bag is laying on the floor. One of my indelible memories is that I decided to take the padlock off and open it up, and I did. And when I did, a cockroach came out, and my mother freaked out and said, "Get that out of here!" And so I ended up taking it out in the garage, and it's like, I'm back home, you know. And my brothers, they were happy to see me and everything. My mother got upset because a cockroach came out of. So, and then a few days later, my dad and I were going off the field, and I started telling him about one of my adventures in Vietnam, and he said, Butch, he always called me Butch. Butch, don't do that. Don't talk about it. Don't you ever talk about it. You just bury it back. You're home safe now. Everything's okay. And I'm thinking, I'm going to be a second lieutenant. I'm going to OCS basic school. I'm a combat veteran. I'm going back. This isn't over. And I made that choice because when I left Vietnam, this colonel came up a couple of days before that and talked to me. He said, you can go back and just get out, be a corporal, or you can go to OCS and you'll be a second lieutenant. You'll be a real one. So I said, okay, well, I'll do that. So, but anyway, we're going out the airport, and my dad's telling me that, and I'm thinking, well, my uncles never talk about the war. And then I protested. Next thing I know, my father's hitting me with a chart on the head, like I'm 12 years old again. And Butch, just listen to me. Just do what I'm telling you to do. It'll be the best. And I just at that age, I would normally, when I was a teenager, half the time my dad told me something, I probably didn't really pay too much attention to it. But for whatever reason, I decided that that was probably the best plan. And so that's what I did. And I had 30 days leave. I had met a girl just before I went in the Marine Corps. I would hang out with her for a few hours, and then somewhere around 9, 10 o'clock at night, I would ditch her, go find my buddies, and we go out and drink until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I had 30 days leave. It's a good thing I was going to OCS because I don't know what would have happened if I didn't have that control mechanism in my life. But one of the things that did happen was almost Christmas, and a whole bunch of us, boys, men, whatever, including my best friend was with First Marine or with the air. He was in the Army, paratroopers, and a couple of guys from the Vietnam War, and then some other guys that were friends of mine. They got married and had kids, so they wouldn't be drafted, and it was a mixed bag. And we went to the old high school and we started playing tag football, and we had bought a bunch of beer and whiskey, and this was a pivotal moment for me. It's hard to explain, but so we're playing tag football. Well, it very quickly turned into tackle. And we are just roughhousing like crazy. A thunderstorm went through, and then it started snowing, and then the ground's covered with snow, and we're playing football, and then we're drinking beers, and yes, sir. And drinking whiskey and stuff. And I just remember it was so wonderful. It was just the whole physical that all that energy that we had and all just I just remember feeling I am free. I'm still alive. I'm here. I'm home. You know, it was just a power. We be dragging ourselves home after a few hours and we were soaking wet and it's cold and I'm drunk and there's blood everywhere and I think I broke my nose again. And you know, it was amazing. I'll never forget it because it was just so releasing and exhilarating at the same time. So anyway, so I ended up going to OCS and then the basic school, which is a 6 month training school for at Quantico, and went through all that. And I'm a real second lieutenant, and I decided to go in the air ring. So I end up at First Mall, First Marine Aircraft Wing in Cherry Point, and I get there with my orders, and I check in on Sunday, and the captain of the day is Dale Moan. We are so happy to see each other. He was my drill instructor. He had been a staff sergeant. I ran into him in Vietnam a couple times. He was a gunnery sergeant. Then he was a Mustang second lieutenant, just like me, only he was ahead of me. And then he ended up being a first lieutenant Mustang. And then, of course, I went back to corporal. And now, you know, almost a little less than a year later, I run into him again. And now he's a captain. He ended up making major, and of course, then the manpower thing started taking an effect. When I left Cherry Point, I'm a first lieutenant, and then I was captain, very briefly, and he was a gunnery sergeant again. But when I got there that day, we're, you know, happy to see each other, and he says, "Hey, Rand, I got some schools." I said, "Really? What you got?" And he says, he's rattling them off. He goes, "Newport, Rhode Island." I said, "Newport, Rhode Island? What's that?" He says, "It's a JAG school. It's a Navy course for naval judge generals. It's the legal officer school. 10 weeks." Sure. So off I go. I checked in on Monday, and I get there and there's 99 captains and then little old me, this shiny new second lieutenant kid to them, right? And 20 of us got a mansion because it was the off season and it's right on the ocean, and each one of us had our own bedroom. And for whatever reason, those guys say, you know, had been through college, law school, ROTC, all that stuff, and now they're captains. Now they're full-time duty, and they want to party. And for whatever reason, I just, you know what, I'm going to work at this. I'll not drink during the week, and then I'll party on the weekends. So I did that, and I studied, and ended up being the class honor man. I pissed them all off. Like, what the hell? How did he end up being the class honorman? So I get back to Cherry Point, and they made me a defense attorney, and I did a couple cases. And one of them was serious because it was sleeping on a watch, which in the Marine Corps Marine Corps took that very, very seriously. That's Fort Leavenworth, a couple years and dishonorable discharge. So I took it real serious and got a couple witnesses. Now, as Scott knows, and the jury is not a jury of your peers. It was a colonel, a major, captain, a couple lieutenants, and probably the sergeant major. I don't remember exactly, but and then this poor slob and me, right? And the prosecutor thinks I got this in the bag, right? And but they acquitted him. So then I got another acquittal shortly after that. So they solved that problem. They made me a prosecutor. That's how you solve that problem. And then,
Hey, Rand, I want to hop in real quick and just share a brief story. So when I was in OCS, you know, a number of years ago, Wesley Fox, Colonel Fox, you know who he is. He was the CO of the school there of OCS, and he was awarded the Medal of Honor for his time in Korea, and he was in a foxhole, and everyone's gone except for him. And, you know, so you can imagine how tough that got for him. So fast forward, you know, we're at OCS and we're doing offensive maneuvers. And so when it was your turn, you were the platoon commander, then you had to brief the squad on how you're going to assault the objective and clear through. Then once you do that, then the next guy goes, right? And this is repeated until everyone's done. Well, at some point, we wind up doing a count and we're missing one of our one of our candidates because it's OCS school, you're not a lieutenant yet. And it's like, holy crap, no one's saying anything. Everyone's just kind of looking around. So, here we're off, assault the objective, finish up, and then we're just kind of like marching, down the trail. We were done, and we see, and I'm not going to mention his name, but we see this guy who's a candidate standing on the side of the path, and he just looked like a sad sack, and it's like, man, where the hell have you been? What's going on? He's like, well, we assaulted the objective, and I'm landing there in the defense, right? Because you're in the D while they're, switching up and giving the new order. He falls asleep, and there was no accountability. So we were up and we moved on. So he's laying there sleeping, and then at some point, somebody's kicking his helmet, and he looks up, and the sun's shining, and there's these bright silver things shining on this guy's collar. That was Colonel Fox. So can you imagine how he felt? He was the only guy left in a foxhole fighting the enemy. And here's this young punk, you know, sleeping in the woods of Quantico. So we get back to the barracks and his stuff, there's not his bunk's not there anymore. Everything's packed away. He was gone that day. So
Mm.
you talked about how serious it is, right? He was yeah. Anyhow, it was kind of funny, but it sucked for that guy, because we actually let him down too, right?
Yeah,
He paid the ultimate price.
yeah.
Yeah. So sorry
Well,
for the question. I just thought that was
no, yeah,
it
that's no,
could
it
go
was
well there.
serious business. So I kept every few months, I'm working my way up on the top of the list to go back to Vietnam. Probably would have been a forward observer type because of my experience, would be my guess. And but I would get sent down to Roosevelt Roads because we had a Marine detachment down there at Puerto Rico, and that's a Navy base. And I would go down there and do all the Article 32 trials because those guys would get in trouble, and then come back and I'd be back down the list, and then a few months later I'd go be headed up the list, and I'd be back down on Roosevelt Roads, and so I come back the second time, and I only got like a year left, and I'm talking with Dale, my guardian angel. And I said, damn, I thought I would be going back to Vietnam. I'm not right kind of on the cusp. And now I'm back down the list. He goes, you dumb bastard. Well, how do you think you're getting sent down to Puerto Rico? I'm sending you down there because you will get killed if you go back again. See, and so he was protecting me. So I'd just like to share that. I don't know, when I left and said goodbye to him, I was a, shiny, brand new captain, and it's like he was a gunnery sergeant again. And so I was married, had a couple kids. I knew I was going to go. I had a career now. Marine Corps damn near got me killed at least 20 times, and then it gave me a career. What the hell? So I went to Syracuse and to where I am now, actually, and then a lot to got my graduate, or, my BA in 3 years, and then I got my law degree and became a lawyer. And life was pretty good. And I was amazed because I was getting calls from guys from the good old days. I had one of them was playing Russian roulette on the phone with me one night while I'm holding my daughter and I'm begging him to tell me where he lives and what his phone number is, and he won't do it. And at one point, I hear him dry fire and it goes clunk. And I'm begging him to tell me where he is and stop. And then he fires it. It goes bang. And I jump up. I almost drop my daughter. I'm holding her because she's got colic, and I'm trying to get her to go back to sleep. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I hear him giggling, and I said, Joe, if you're not going to tell me where you are or give me your phone number, I'm going to hang up. And then he started cursing at me, and I hung up. I don't know what happened to Joe. And I made a decision then. I was done. I wasn't going to have no more Band of Brothers for me because I was going to be drinking over this stuff. So I made a conscious decision I'm not going to be in the Marine Corps anymore. I'm going to be what I am now. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a father. I'm going to be a husband. I'm going to live my life. And a couple of the guys locally who would get on me every once in a while. Hey, come on over to BFW Friday night. We'll have a few drinks and talk about the good old days. No, I don't think I want to do that. And I started giving money to the Marine Corps League, and That was it for me, And and for a while I was happy. I seemed like normal. I mean, I was fulfilling my dreams and not being poor, and I had a career, and I'm getting, I have a family and everything. And then one night, I'm back in Vietnam, and I'm right in the middle of a battle, and I can smell the gunpowder, and I can hear the shots and the yelling and all of it, right? And then all of a sudden, I'm disemboweled, and I'm sitting on the ground, and I'm trying to put my innards back inside of me, and I'm screaming, and I'm realizing this time I'm done. I'm not getting out of this one. I can't put my guts, nobody's, I'm done. I'm going to die. And all of a sudden, I'm surrounded in white light, and I open my eyes, and I realize, and I see my wife is laying on the floor by the bathroom door, and she just pushed up the light switch. And then all of a sudden, I realize I'm not in Vietnam. I'm not covered in blood. I'm covered in sweat. I am smelling manure because I have voided myself, and the bed is full of manure and urine. And we're looking at each other, and we're like, "This is bad." We both knew that things had changed. And then I had got caught in a battle once where we ran out of ammo and I had used the bayonet. All right. So now I'm having these nightmares, only now I'm the one that's getting killed. Right. And then I would have the one I was always flying, and then all of a sudden I'm outside the plane. That was another kind of recurring, uh, very disturbing nightmare I would have, and I would learn to either wake myself up. I began to drink real heavy at night. I put the kids to bed, do whatever I had to do, wife go to bed, and I would just pound it for an hour or so, go to bed. And that way it didn't seem to affect me that much. I wake up at 5 o'clock, get up early, go to work, and I was usually at work by 6:30, and you know, um, and it wasn't too bad, but. And I don't know, there's other stories I could tell, I guess, but eventually the nightmares kind of ebbed and flowed. I learned how to, sometimes I could actually stop in the middle of them and stop it, or I would wake myself up, or I would divert it. I don't know how my brain could do that, but I could play around with it that way. And eventually they weren't near as, they kind of faded away after a while. But then the drinking itself became a problem, my late 50s, early 60s. But I did hike the Appalachian Trail when I was 72, Rob, and I wrote a book about it. It's called The Spiritual Passage. And I made it 1,863 miles. And I fell down Wilcox Mountain in Massachusetts and messed up my hip and took a month off. And then we went back after 30 days and I made it into the Whites. And we had to go around Washington because it was closed because it was snowing in July or whatever the hell it was. And I did Moosilauke and I did Wolf. And then we went back to do Washington. And at that point, my hip hurt so bad I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. It was kind of like your knee thing there, and probably. And so we were going to take 3 days to get over Washington. So we got full packs and we're climbing up on the south side and got a half part way up. And I just turned to my brother and I started crying. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. You know, we we're both down to 155 pounds. You can't eat enough food to keep, so I was exhausted and I was in so much pain. So my brother finished it with his son while I was having a hip operation. So yeah, I only did 1,863 miles, but if you Google Spiritual Passage, my book will pop right up. I would love to see your book. So I think that's probably enough out of me.
So
Oh, that
spiritual
that was a
passage. Yeah.
yeah, that was a lot, Rand. Wow, there's I know you have more stories, and maybe we can do a part two for some of that if you'd be willing, a
Yeah,
couple
well,
months down the road, since we're doing this once a month. But you know, I just want to thank you again for your number one for your service, and you probably heard this, right? As a Vietnam vet, a lot of Vietnam vets didn't have people to say, welcome home,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And so this is a long time coming, right? But welcome home, brother. Uh,
Thanks.
I when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, as a young guy, I was working and going to school. I had to pay my way through school. So I'm working at Lowe's, and this is, I don't know, 84 maybe, 1984. And I was working in the sales department. I went to school in the day, worked at night, and I worked weekends. And it's Veterans Day. And, there's a line, I'm taking care of it. There used to be a computer there. People would come up with whatever they wanted to buy. You'd sell it to them and give them a receipt. They go to the cashier up front and pay for it. So I see this guy in line. He's about the size of the guy that told you to go to the back of the line at the airport. He's a big guy like that, right? So, he's going through the queue, then he's standing in front of me, and I'm up on the sales platform, and he's taller than me, standing on the ground. And he's got this black leather vest, big beard, hairs in a ponytail, just a big guy. And he's got Vietnam patch here, the POWMIA patch over here. I think probably came in on his motorcycle. And so I finished the sale and we were handing people little flags, right? I handed him a flag and I said, "Thank you for your service." And his back got straight and he looked at me very stern and he started to get tears in his eyes. Tears just welled up in his eyes. And he kind of broke down. He said, "You're the first person who said that to me. And I spent a lot of time in Vietnam." And I was like, holy smokes. And then I started, kind of wiping my eyes. I mean, it was just a very emotional thing. You're this big guy that could have ripped me from limb to limb in a, in an open moment. That really, really bothered me, you know. And as I was telling you before, Rand, when I was telling my Marines and sailors when we were coming back from Iraq, if somebody tells you that, if they are thankful for you and they go out of their way to let you know that, by God, let them know how much that means to you, because guys like you didn't get that, a lot
I
of you
didn't.
guys. And so
Yeah.
thank you for your service. As guys like you, Rand, you've had an impact on a lot of people. You may not know that, but there were people watching you. There were people who saw the things that you did. There were people that respected you, and you were probably the impetus for a lot of folks going back to decide, I'm going to make something out of my life. That guy ran. Look at look at what he did. And it sounds like you had a guardian angel on a few occasions, right?
Yeah.
Uh, one that you knew, but there were probably folks that were there that that had your back. And you're here sharing this story with us now. So there's a plan out there for all of us, right? And a lot of times we don't know what it is, and we suffer through things. But I think this bit of a story here that you shared with us today is going to resonate with folks, and even folks of a different generation, because war's hell, and we suffer through a lot of things that we never thought we'd have to go through. We suffer through things as kids. Um, you know, things change in our lives in an instant, and then we have to grow up in a different way. And so I think that what you shared today is so meaningful. And listening to your story for me, there's a lot of parallels that I won't go into. But as you were talking, I'm thinking, crap, well, okay, that sounds familiar. Yeah, I remember those things, you know, and I'm thankful that I'm who I am today. And as we talked about earlier, I wouldn't go through and change anything because I wouldn't be sitting here talking with you and everybody that's, watching here live.
Right.
We wouldn't be doing that. And that means so much. Thank you for all you've done for our country, for sharing your story here today. It means something to all of us, Rand. And,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just want to
yeah,
Rand,
please.
thanks, my friend. When you're talking, I was really self-reflecting, and ha having worked in the military for many years here, there's so many things that they are aware of before going in and coming out of, all the support, benefits, etc. And then I flash back onto your generation and my generation, and the best way I can describe them is one, they were extremely violent wars. Nobody was carrying webcams, cameras on them, which meant, really bad things happened. And where people are so attuned to navigating forward and transitional complexities today, our generations knew nothing. Both the Vietnam generations and the Rhodesian Bush Wars were called baby killers. Um, you didn't belong. We lost our country. They don't even know who a Rhodesian is anymore, let alone the Bush War. And we were very much the lost generation that had to kind of find our sanity with very little help. And I think your story for me was so important because it reminded me how privileged we are today to have the support that we do have. Yet, even with that, 24, 30 more people a day are getting to a point where living becomes a problem. So, what was it like for a generation in the 60s and the 70s who had nothing? Absolutely nothing. So, I think your story from the wilderness of that, you have a lot to share because you learned skill sets that grew from just an absolute empty terrain of knowing anything, let alone what combat could even, the impacts combat could even have on one. So your story, as I've said to you before, is powerful. We need to gather the stories of the old grey ones because I have so much wisdom to share. And I really want to thank you. And you've lived an extraordinary life, and it offers hope that even with all the help, people struggle, but when they turn to the elders, they can find another wisdom that can also help them move through the darkness that they are in. So thanks, Rand. You
Thank you.
really are a blessing.
Thank you.
And Rand, if I could ask just a quick question, it's kind of a generic question, but I think it's an important question. So if somebody asked you for your opinion on service, whether it's a dad saying, "Hey, my son or daughter are thinking about going into the military," and we can even say the Marine Corps. Uh, Anything come to the top of your head on what you'd want them to know before they go in terms of expectations or something that's going to be able to help them make a decision?
I still feel firmly that my service helped me immensely. It was I'm a big fan of people serving their country and being patriotic, and freedom isn't free, And but I think a career in the military. Now, my story is pretty extraordinary. Most people, a lot of people in them have great military careers, and they don't have a whole lot of trauma and things. So there's a lot of different career paths today, especially with the educational stuff, computers, probably AI. I don't know. All this stuff is. There was no women in the Marine Corps. We would go months without seeing a woman, and it'd be like a nurse, and we would all be like the placed people on the planet because we were so happy just to be in the presence of a woman. So that's all different aspect of it too. But no, I'm a big fan. I think my grandson would benefit. Well, I have one grandson that just went through boot camp in the Army. It changed him immensely. He's a much better man now than he was before, for sure, and he knows it. It's an opportunity for every man and woman to have a big growth experience at the government expense. And I was in Vietnam for a year. When I got my W-2 for that year, I didn't even make $1,000 because I didn't have any place to spend it, so it didn't matter. But um, it's a great career. I wish more people would give it consideration. And I think when you're serving your country, that's an extra bonus. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it. A lot of people don't take advantage of it, but if you're a lost soul and you don't know what you want to do with your life, go in the military. If you can do it physically and you have the some grit and some guts and some moral character, you will be a better person when you serve in the military.
Amen. I absolutely agree with that for sure. I think
And
we
don't
all
take
have.
off Don't take off your uniform. One of the things I left out, Scott, was because of what happened to me in LA and when all the guys I was with, we would leave base, we would go to the nearest gas station, get out of our military uniform, put on our civvies, go on our weekend pass or whatever, go back to the same gas station and civvies and put our uniforms back on. We didn't dare wear them in public because we were going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
People were going
Well,
to be provoking us, and they sure as hell weren't going to thank us. So, yeah,
yeah.
I mean, wear your uniform proudly. You can at least do that today. And there is all kinds of services now. I mean, the VA is incredible, and lots of your folks programs, all kinds of programs for veterans. And I can tell you, not only did I have suicidal problems, but a lot of the guys died from alcoholism, either directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
And there was no help from my generation, none. First time I ever had contact with any government agency was when I went to the VA psych ward in handcuffs at 65 years old
Wow.
to
Yeah,
protect me
Rand,
from
that's
myself. You know.
right. I mean, you hit on something that's absolutely true and important. I think that when you look at the nonprofit landscape, there's like 40 some thousand that I think are veteran related alone. I think that's the number. It's a crazy number. But yeah, those things didn't exist. My grandfather who was a Marine, he fought in the Second World War. He fought in the Battle of Tarawa, one of the bloodiest battles
Mm,
of that time, and came back. Decided, I've done my time. I've served, and he became a fireman at the Federal Firefighting Service. Did that for 35 years. He did not, he didn't share much about being a Marine. Only the funny stories and the good things, but he didn't talk about the trauma and the real things that happened, the deadly encounters there in combat until I became a Marine. And then he opened up and shared some of those things. And I was like, holy smokes. Uh, but yeah, he didn't have anyone to talk to, right?
yeah, yeah.
I recall seeing a documentary of Marines that were uh, left on Wake Island. And, some of them were able to go back, and these guys are in their 90s. And there was maybe four or five of them, I think. And they're walking around and they remember like it was yesterday, the locations, what was happening when, and they're sitting there. And one of these guys, he just starts crying. He's like, I thought I was crazy. He goes, I thought I was absolutely bat crap crazy. He goes, because I had no one to talk to, and I didn't know other people were suffering like this because I didn't talk to anybody. He goes, and to be able to come here now and see these guys and to be able to share our stories here. I never thought I would have this in my life, and it's changed. This guy's 90, right? And he said, this has changed my life, this ability to open up and to
Mm,
talk with people and to know that, man, it wasn't just me, and looking at that now, we think, well, of course, but you don't know what you don't know, right? And when you're
right.
suffering that badly and you feel like you maybe can't trust anyone because you think they're going to think that you are bad shit crazy, right? Uh, it is different now, and that is one thing that we all had to be so thankful for. Now, those of us that served in combat here in the near term, relatively recent in history, that we do have um, resources that weren't available, and
That's
we
right.
have people that did serve and decided at some point to turn around and say, I think I might be able to help, whatever that is, whether it's something like what we're doing today or in an organization where they're 40 hours a week helping. But yeah, Barry mentioned that. I think that is an absolute important thing, and it's a big difference. And that's something that I think we need to make sure folks understand too,
Hmm.
that you can talk about these things, and that's where healing begins once you're able to open up. So, well, let's do this. I saw that Sabine had her hand up a little while ago. So, Barry, are you good with opening up to questions?
Yes, thank you, Scott. It seems to me that I've missed the time. Did you change the time from PT from PST to P? This is why I'm supposed to be late.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Well, that's quite all right. Yes, it's funny. We sometimes we forget about the
yeah,
folks that are living here in the U.S. Yeah, we had a daylight savings time by an hour.
right, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So we moved
Yeah,
ahead an hour. So
I
there
understand. I
you go.
understand.
Yeah. Well,
Yes,
thank you for being here. Yeah.
yeah, thanks a lot. It moves me very deeply. The few minutes I listen to Rand, I want to say hello to you, Rand. I'm from Germany. My grandfather was participant of World War II, and it resonates very deeply what you told here in the few minutes I'm with you. I feel your pain and I feel the weight you carry. It's obviously for me. And this is what I want to say to you that it gives me help to understand what my grandfather must have been through. And that is very important for me. That is why I take part in these conversations because I want to um, take a picture of that, what happens during that heavy time. And I feel also what you say that you had no help after that to process that. And this is also a similar thing with my grandfather. He has also no help to process that, what he experienced in that war. And this is resonates very deep with me, and I can have an impression what that means and what you suffer from and what my grandfather suffers from. Second thing is what Scott says. Thank you for your service. This is also a very, very important part for me too. I will put it on a wider area. Americans freed us from Nazism and fascism, and this is part of the story of your people that you did that, and that is what I'm very grateful for, and I feel that always when I am on memorials, for example, in France. Last year I was in France on the Omaha Beach Memorial, and that was extremely moving to see the graveyard there and the memorial of Caen from all that what happened on D-Day. And there I feel the first time what it meant, what the American people or the American soldiers sacrificed for us. And that is really, really a big sacrifice. And so I see that in that wider context that you're also part of these ancestors who did that great service to free a country from the dictatorship, and you paid a very high price for that. That this is what I feel, and I want to say thank you that you did that, and I think you can be very proud of that. That is what I want to say to you.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Hey,
Please.
Sabine, I want to thank you for that too. And I want to draw a very clear line here.
Mm,
An experience that I had, and I won't go into grand detail, just enough to.
mhm.
So my brother-in-law, he retired as lieutenant colonel in the Army. Him and I went in 2019 to the 75th commemoration of D-Day,
I see. Yeah.
and that was a bucket list thing that we both wanted to do. And
Mhm.
at some point, you're talking to people, and these are people from all around Europe, different ages,
Of course.
and to a person. They're
Mm.
like, you did you guys serve in the, yeah, thank you for your service and thank you for America.
Yeah.
That's still in our education system. We understand what happened. You
Yeah.
guys came twice. Thank you guys. And it was like, holy smokes.
Mm.
Americans have short memories, you know, but, and I shared that with this one gentleman. I said, this is amazing to me. I said, this is like your Fourth of July thing, for you guys, that your independence. And I
Mm.
said, Americans just don't think in those terms. He's like, well, you know why? He goes, you guys were never invaded. You guys never lost your liberty.
Right.
You won it and became a nation, but you guys have never been tested in that way. So I can see how that might happen. And I had never thought of it that way. But just like I was saying earlier, when someone says something like that, it's very meaningful. Because yeah, a lot of people didn't come back from the Second World War, and a lot of folks came back and they were struggling as Rand had struggled. And so thank you for being here today, and thank you for sharing what's on your heart because it matters to us, and it's important to hear that. Being thankful is an important thing. Thank you.
Yes, I can say that from my heart because my family of origins suffers deeply from the trauma my grandfather brought back from Russia, and that's also influences my life very deeply. And I can't imagine, I would not like to imagine what would happen if the Nazis would finish all. And so for me, it's absolutely, I'm absolutely thankful about for that service that they freed us. This is was absolutely necessary. And when you had been there on Omaha Beach, you feel it what that meant because so many young people, so many young soldiers died there, and it's just incredible, unbelievable. Yes. So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
very humbling.
yeah.
I recall having those very same feelings,
Mm,
thinking about my time in combat, thinking about, man, it wasn't like that,
mm.
you know. And, I mean, I can feel good about it, but I also, sometimes I struggle with that. And so, Brandy, do you have anything else you wanted to say to Savine? If not, we'll go on to Sarah and see what she has going on here.
Just thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Sarah, what you got?
Okay, first off, Sabine, I always love having you with us because you add an angle that we rarely get. So thank you. Thanks for being on and joining the conversation. I also, gosh, I have so many thoughts, but Rand, your story just keeps that ignite, you ignite the fire in me to keep these platforms going. I just want to thank you so much for sharing, and especially from a Vietnam perspective. I just a lot of thoughts and feelings come up from hearing your story. And and I also want to just acknowledge you, Scott. I remember when we were on a call and two young men from Abbey Gate came back and you told them the same thing. You said, "Welcome back." I still get choked up when I see that moment. And it's just that absolute deep connection of awareness of what people need to hear after their service. It's so moving and touching to me. Um, and so I think one quick story, because these talks are not only to help people release their stories and help others that are listening that are our protectors. Civilians need to hear these stories. We have got to somehow get a clue. We have got to get a clue. I did not have a clue until a veteran shared a story with me, and then I was a little more curious. And that's so these times really mean a lot to me as a civilian because we owe it to you to support you on the back end of all our protectors. And a quick story that taught me a lot too is we have our editor of our book, Natalie, love note lady, Natalie. Um, she always would write love notes constantly. She still does. She writes love notes to our protectors and she gives them all out all the time, just gives them out. She sees somebody, a first responder or a veteran, always giving out these love notes and thanking them and sharing her heart in this love note. And so I thought that is such a cool idea. So I kept a bunch of love notes, wrote a bunch of love notes to veterans and first responders, kept them in my vehicle, and was in Costco one day. I came out to the parking lot and I thought, oh, there's a man with a Navy hat on. And he was probably Vietnam era. And so I said, oh, please, can you wait for 1 second? I want to go get something for you. So I ran to my car, got him this love note for a veteran. And I said, listen, thank you for your service. And I see that you have this hat on. And so I gave it to him. He goes, thank you. And he gave me a big hug. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is great. He values that. And I got to share that with him. So then I'm driving away. So I see him kind of open his note and I'm driving away and I see him just on his hood. It's gonna make me cry, but he was on his hood. I could just see him crying. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is such a simple thing to do. And again, it just ignites that fire of like, you know what, civilians, we need to understand the human part of service. And, then I think about, the IDS, doesn't everybody, the civilians have to serve for a year or two, and they get it. They get it. So they are so much more involved in the veterans. They're clued in, they're connected. And I think they have more programs in really helping to release the trauma. So again, I have a heart full of love for you, Rand. I really appreciate you sharing. Also, Scott, your awareness, and Barry too, always so much. And then this is just such a great group to have this conversation. Rob, glad you're here. Sabine, and then Rich. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Sarah, sometimes just one person doing what you did, whether it's a letter or a kind word, that, knowing that someone gives a damn is a big deal. Because a lot of people get to a point where they feel like no one sees them, no one understands, no one cares. And it only takes one time to touch somebody's heart and to change their life, and it can happen at any age, right? Some folks wait a lifetime for something like that and they don't get it. So the ability to reach out to people and let them know that, hey, we do care. We might not understand everything you've been through, but this is a place to start talking about it, if you want to do that, right? Yeah, this matters. What we're doing now absolutely matters. And we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you starting this, Sarah. I'll never get tired of saying that.
Hmm.
So yeah, we thank you very much.
It is an honor, Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Just
I wanted
two-way
to,
street.
Sarah, I also wanted to say, bless you, really, from thousands of kilometers away. You have no idea what you do and add to the healing of people's journeys. And, I know I've said this before, but today's also a good time to say it again, is that there's a weight, that Rich carries. Rob, I mean, when you talked about the firefighter and the tower that was collapsing, you're the first person I've met that has actually been there. And I had goosebumps as you said that. And I know that as we share our stories, that weight lifts. And the one thing I know about that weight, it's that terrible grief that lies at the center of our hearts. And I also think that as we age, that weight can get heavier because we're dealing with mortality and time is running short, and our bodies aren't as strong as they are and as resilient as they are. And I know that weight is not, it's not just about the doing and the remedies and the medication, but it's about the love and the care and the thanks that we bring to each other that helps the healing. That's what the heart really needs. Yeah, it needs all the other stuff as well. But when someone thanks us, and when as a tribe we gather and we love each other, we begin to heal. And I think the story and the power of our story is such a critical point at which we can gather together and remember who we were and still are, and that we still hurt, all of us. We still hurt. There's still pain. But I think that pain, they talk about PTS, and as you know, I have a profound dislike of disordered because no one should ever call anyone disordered. But if it weren't for the PTS, there would be no PTG, there would be no PT growth, post-traumatic growth. So the invitation from the tough stuff we've been in is to gather the wisdom that lies waiting for us if we do our journey. And Rand, you really, for me, epitomize it. Rob, I'm looking forward to hearing your story. Sabine, the heart that you bring to this gathering and the depth that exists within you is wonderful. Rich, Rich, I want to say that it's not about how many people we change, but it's one human soul at a time. And sometimes it'll take weeks or months for somebody to pick up something powerful. But I can tell you now that you have had the most profound impact. I can't speak for anyone else, but I can tell you now that when I live my life, what we do when we gather is we start to internalize. All of us, we live within us. And in the moments that we struggle, we turn to those internal figures of folk that we've bonded to and become brothers and sisters. So you live in people's hearts, Rich. It doesn't matter whether you see them physically or not, whether they turn up physically or not, but you have no idea how many hearts you live in. You're already doing what you're meant to do. Your mission is already exactly as it needs to be. So that's my rant for today. But yeah, I just want to say thank you. I feel so privileged. One, I'm married to the most extraordinary podcast person, Scott. My wife is terribly jealous. We've had a
Thank you,
year
Barry.
together without a squabble.
Thank you, Barry.
I'm
You
grateful
threw me
for
off
it.
for a second there. I was
I think I'm blushing.
I love you,
That was a
brother.
lot of input.
Man.
But yeah, so thank you for today. Rob, anyone else? Do you have anything else that you'd need
I
to
think
add?
Rich
Yeah.
has a
Rich,
question
yep.
here.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I'm going to tell you personally, you're definitely going to have a part two with Rand because uh, Rand and I first met on one of my second Friday calls where I was on, nobody shows up, and all of a sudden here's Rand. And I introduced myself, he introduced himself, and I said, Rand, the floor is yours. So I let him tell his story. And from that point on, we we're in touch all the time. Uh, I consider myself an amateur Vietnam War historian because it was my generation, and I mean I got tons of books. I devour as much as I can. I send stuff to Rand. Rand made a point earlier when he was talking about the non-combat deaths. I mean, those guys had um, 3 or 4 poisonous snakes that were out there in the jungle. And in fact, there's a story that Rand will tell sometime about a crate, 2-step. Snake bites you, take 2 steps, you're done. And one had crawled up the pant leg of his trouser while he was asleep, and he had the awareness to realize that don't move because and they are guided by heat, body heat, and they could be you could be 3 or 4 feet away, and they sense that body heat, and they move toward it. And they were notorious in the base camps. They come down, they clear the area, and make a base camp, and now you got rats running around in the base camps because of the foodstuffs and all. And then here come the crates and some of the other poisonous snakes. Guys who would get killed by alligators crossing rivers, right? Tigers, uh, centipede, 3 or 4 foot centipedes that were uh, dangerous. So Rand and I, we that one call, we connected, and I just love the guy. And like I said, we stay in touch. I send him stuff, and he's appreciative of everything that I send him, and he lets me know that. And so, Rand, uh, I well, I love you, man, and I think you know that, and as well as everybody else on this call. But you're very special, and like I said, it was my generation. Uh, I had a lot of friends uh, that were Marines in Vietnam. Um, some of them passed because of the problems they had with Agent Orange. You know, some of the, the the chemical being in the streams, and sometimes they didn't have water. They would go in and put their canteen in one of those streams, and you didn't know what you were getting. And you throw the dechlorizate pill in there, but that wasn't going to help you. I knew one Marine at plane came over and dumped it on his whole platoon. Right, so it was a lot of stuff that went on that people don't know about, aren't aware of, rather, and then you had the government back here that had, you know, were just they didn't listen to the people on the ground, the people that knew what was going on. They didn't. And then we had the advent of the first televised war, and so that brought on all um, the discord here in the States, which I happen to be involved in a lot. You know, the demonstrations and the violence taking over universities. Rutgers University was taken over, and I mean, it was just a nightmare. Um, but welcome home, and I'm glad you're part of our platform. And like I said, I owe an awful lot to Sarah, uh, Barry, Scott, Saban, and uh, I I just love all you guys. I'll have to shut up now because lately I've been tending to be a little bit emotional, but I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Rich. I love you too, man.
Well, Rich, we want to thank you for your service too. You know, for those that will see this recording later and don't know maybe who Rich is, Rich served as a police officer. He was in the DEA. He's got 30 plus years of serving his country here in the homeland. And so if it wasn't for men and women like you, it might not matter what guys like us that served in the military did, because you have to have a home that's functional, right? Something to come back to. So thank you, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, amen, brother.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So, Rob, before we hand it back to Rand and ask him if there's anything that he wants to, leave with us as we depart for the weekend, do you have anything you want to say? Any comments, questions?
First of all, Rand, welcome home.
Thank you.
Okay. I totally get this concept. Okay. First of all, I was born in 68. Okay. So I learned about what was happening after the fact. Okay. And I have a lot of friends who have been in the military. I have one who was KIA. So I totally get it. And to hear that this is the way prior veterans were treated, I just, not having lived through it, it still gets to me. I share just a real quick story. A friend of mine who we were at physical therapy together. He was he's a Vietnam veteran, and we were talking one time about him coming home, and he was in he lands here, and he's in his uniform. He traveled in his uniform. Went into a bar to get a beer and a burger, and they threw him out. And he's telling me about all this, and it really was unsettling for me. So we had the same physical therapy schedule. So the next time we got together, it was in the morning, okay, but I went to Wendy's and they were serving breakfast. I said, breakfast isn't going to cut it. I need a burger. Okay. And I stopped by the beer distributor and I picked up a 6-pack like 10 o'clock in the morning. And I showed up at physical therapy and he walked in and I said to him, "Hey, brother, welcome home." And if I tell you, the other people in our time slot, they could hear us teasing each other and stuff like that. And they heard this story before, they understood. And if I tell you, there had to be 10 people there crying. Um, and I wasn't doing it to make attention. I was just trying to fix something that was broken, that wasn't right several, 40 years before. Okay. That's all I was trying to do. So again, thank you and welcome home.
Thank you, Rob.
And Rob, you're making me tear up, brother.
Sorry.
No, hey man, yeah, that's a good thing, right? When stories can touch you that way, that's absolutely a good thing, and we all need to know that. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I see that Rich in the chat said I was a cop in 1967. Yeah, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I was born in 65, so I got you by what, 2.5, 3 years maybe. But yeah, just a little guy. But again, folks like Moran and Rich, there were men like you guys in my life when I was a very young guy, and I didn't know how important that was. And boy, I found out quick over time just how important it was to have guys like you uh, who mentored. Sometimes the mentoring, you didn't know you were being mentored, because you're a dumb young guy. And then you fast forward and you're like, wow, okay, wow, now I get it. Now I understand what he was saying. Uh, and so I know that both of you guys have done that. I just know that. And so we're thankful. You guys are warriors and you're still with us. And we're thankful that we have you here and that we get to hear these stories and that we see that you guys care. Because if you didn't care, we wouldn't be here having this conversation, right? And so that means so much. And these younger folks need to hear these stories. It's like that the tribe, right? What did we used to do before, hundreds of thousands of years back, right? We were in tribe and we shared stories over the fire, traditions, the oral traditions, and we've lost some of that. And so doing this is kind of like that to some degree. But so Barry, before we turn it over to Rand to say goodbye, do you have any closing comments?
Yeah. Yeah, just a thanks again. I think the power of our story, it recognizes the burden, the pain, and the grief that lives at the core of all of us. And just to have a place where people can come and heal through witnessing and sharing the stories and knowing that they're not walking their journey alone, but they're actually walking in the company of generations of people that are here and no longer here. Even the ghosts, even those that are no longer with us through story become visible to us. So together, I think we heal better. And then afterwards, when we can think about all the other stuff that we do, the groups, the modalities, etc., which is important. But when we know that we are in the company of each other on this journey back to ourselves, from ourselves, and as many of us are approaching the gray areas of our life, we're never alone. So that's kind of what I really want to say today. And I'm really grateful to have come on today and be with just such extraordinary human beings. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you, Barry. Yeah. Hey, so Rand, we're gonna close it up here. Just give you a couple minutes, whatever time you need. Is there anything you'd like to leave with us today as we get ready to head out to the weekend?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I'm very grateful for the fact that I had to go through a lot of things to become aware of a higher power and a spiritual and having a soul. And I think that you are doing God's work. And I think that I ended up here for a reason. And so carry on. You're doing a great job, and it's very important work. And I appreciate everything you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Rand, that means a lot.
Mm.
Absolutely means a lot. Coming
Mm.
from a man like you, you know, we're not here looking to get validated, but man, you sure did do that, you know, and that means the world because that's what we're hoping that we're doing in the power of our story. And again, coming from you, that's gold. Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Mm.
sir. Absolutely.
Amen.
I
All right.
just can I say
Yes.
also something?
Sure. Sure.
What moves me is we all did not choose that faith because we did not choose to take part in this kind of war, even if it's the Second World War or the Vietnam War. And we were wounded by these wars, and this made something with our subconscious brain. And I think we carry these wounds. Even I carry such a wound. But I'm civilian, but I carry the wound of my grandfather. And I think it's so important to recognize that and to see that and to validate that. And so I also want to say you're not alone, Rand. You were seen and you were held and you were appreciated for that, what you did. And I want to thank you to you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sabine. Yeah, that's wow. This has been powerful session here. It's been funny. It's been, kind of like, wow, that's crazy. And it's been very touching too. So, and that's life, right? That's the life that we have here. And again, thank you, Rand, for your kind words at the very end here. They mean a lot to all of us. And thank you. So, well, look, everyone, have a great weekend. It's already Saturday for Barry, and the rest of us are going to be heading into the weekend here. Thank you for your time here today, and we look forward to having you guys back on episode 2 of season 2 about a month from now. God bless you guys.
Thank you. God
Take care,
bless.
everybody.